Hello everyone. In recent months, Bangladesh has witnessed one of its most significant political upheavals in decades, culminating in the resignation of the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on August 5, 2024. Now, the protests that led to her downfall were driven by a widespread dissatisfaction with her government, which may be viewed as increasingly authoritarian and corrupt. The crisis began with growing discontent over a controversial job quota system that reserved a significant portion of government jobs for the descendants of those who fought in the 1971 Liberation War. Now, this policy was widely seen as reinforcing the ruling of Awami League's grip on power and led to a massive protest that quickly escalated into a broader demand for political change. These protests, fueled by long standing grievances against the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's increasingly authoritarian rule, culminated in her resignation and departure to India earlier this month. The protest began in mid July 2024, initially sparked by a Supreme Court's decision to reinstate controversial quotas for government jobs that had previously been abolished in the year 2018. These quotas were seen as unfair by many, particularly the students who feared it would limit their job prospects. When the court decided to reinstate these quotas, it ignited a wave of student led demonstrations that quickly gained a national momentum. Now, let's try and understand a brief background of the recent crisis. First and foremost, let's look at the historical context. The political landscape of Bangladesh is heavily influenced by its history, particularly the Liberation War of 1971, which led to the independence from Pakistan. The war left deep scars on nation's political psyche, with various factions claiming the legacy of the independent movement. Now, among those, the two dominant political parties were the Bangladeshi Awami League and the Bangladeshi Nationalist Party, which emerged from the historical backdrop, with the former led by Sheikh Hasina and the latter by Khalida Zai. The rivalry between these two leaders and their parties has often resulted in a political deadlock, violence, and unrest. So, how the historical context has impacted the recent political developments? In the recent year, Bangladesh has experienced a series of political crises which are often characterized by widespread protests, strikes, which are also known as hartals, and violent clashes between supporters of these opposing parties. The most significant tensions has revolved around the election process and allegations of corruptions and issues of governance. Now, elections in Bangladesh has often been marred by allegations of rigging, voter suppression, and violence, which is not a new in a democracy. The most recent general elections in 2024 were no exceptions. The Awami League under Sheikh Hasina secured a landslide victory, but the opposition and many international observers, including the USA, criticized these elections as being flawed and unfair. The governance and its corruption charges. Corruption remains a pervasive issue in Bangladesh, affecting various levels of government and the society. The opposition frequently accuses the ruling party of using state machinery to suppress dissent and maintain its hold on the power. This has been exacerbated by the judiciary's perceived lack of independence, leading to concerns about the erosion of our democratic institutions. The human rights concerns. The political turmoil in Bangladesh has also been marked by significant human rights abuses. There have been numerous reports of enforced disappearance, extrajudicial killings, and the suppression of freedom of speech. Journalists, activists, and opposition figures often face harassment and intimidation, contributing to a climate of fear and suppression. Now that we have a brief understanding of the crisis, let's down deep into the problem. The current political turmoil in Bangladesh has reached a critical point marked by widespread unrest, a change in leadership, and significant concerns about the future of country's democracy and stability. The current political landscape in Bangladesh appears to have shifted dramatically. The recent elections were marked by a lack of inclusivity, with the opposition boycotting the process. This has led to a shrinking democratic space, increasing human rights concerns, and significant economic downturn. Unemployment, especially among the youth who once formed a crucial support base for Ms. Hasina, has soared, contributing to growing dissatisfaction. The government's harsh response to the student led anti discrimination student movement further alienated this segment, which once benefited from the economic growth under Hasina's leadership. Recent reports by the Human Rights Watch Council on the foreign relations spoke about it, and I quote, as the process escalated, they expanded beyond the issues of quotas, becoming a broader movement against the government's alleged corruption, economic mismanagement, and the suppression of political dissent. The government's response was heavy-handed, with security forces accusing of using excessive force resulted in numerous resulting in numerous casualties and thousands of arrests. The situation grew increasingly dire, with reports of extrajudicial killings and enforced disappearance adding fuel to the fire. So by early August, the movement has evolved into a full-fledged non-cooperation campaign demanding the repression of Sheikh Hasina. And on August 4, tens of thousands of protesters gathered in Dhaka, which is the capital of Bangladesh, defying curfews and facing off against security forces. The following day, under intense pressure and with military seemingly withdrawing its support, Hasina resigned and fled to India. In response to this escalating violence and the political turmoil, the Bangladeshi military, led by General Waqar uz Zaman, took a pivotal role in the transition. Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus was appointed as the head of the interim government, tasked with restoring order and paving the way for the new elections. This interim government, which includes a mix of academics, NGO activists, and a retired military officer, faces the enormous challenge of restoring peace and addressing the deep seated issues which led to the crisis. Now, this political landscape remains volatile, with key opposition figures like Khalida Zai, recently released from the house arrest, pushing for quick elections. However, there is a significant skepticism about whether the interim government, which lacks a democratically obtained mandate, will be able to stabilize the situation in time. There is also a widespread concern about the military's role in this transition, given Bangladesh's history of military coups and the lasting influence of the armed forces on its politics. So now that we have carefully examined the political turmoil and its impact on Bangladesh and its society, let's look at how this political upheaval or how this particularly disturbed political landscape is going to affect its neighboring countries, including India. So this turmoil in Bangladesh poses a multifaceted challenge for India. Politically, it complicates New Delhi's diplomatic strategy. Economically, it threatens the trade and investment. And from a security perspective, it raises the specter of increased cross border threats. Socially, the potential of a refugee crisis and its impact on the communal harmony in India cannot be overlooked. And strategically, Bangladesh's instability could tilt the regional balance, particularly if it leads to greater Chinese influence in Dhaka. Navigating these challenges will require a nuanced and multi pronged approach, balancing immediate security concerns with long term strategic interests while remaining committed to the democratic values and the regional stability. So, first of all, let's look at the political impact of this turmoil. Now, the ongoing turmoil in Bangladesh has significant implications for India, given the historical, cultural, and geographical ties between these two nations. As a closer neighbor and a strategic partner, India is deeply invested in Bangladesh's stability, and the political instability marked by the recent elections and the growing unrest deeply impacts India's diplomatic relation with Dhaka. Historically, India has supported Sheikh Hasina's government due to her friendly stance towards the New Delhi, including her cooperation on the security issues and the regional integration. However, this opposition, boycotting elections, and a shrinking democratic space, India's support for the current regime could be perceived as backing an undemocratic process, potentially straining ties with the other political factions in Bangladesh. So now let's look at the security impact. Now this turmoil poses significant security challenges for India, particularly in the northern eastern states. The porous Indo-Bangladesh border, stretching over 4,000 kilometers, has been a long-standing concern due to issues like illegal immigration, smuggling, and cross-border terrorism. Political instability could exacerbate these issues, leading to an increase in illegal activities that could destabilize the border regions. Furthermore, the rise of extremist groups such as the banned Bangladeshi Jamaat-e-Islami and their potential resurgence amid the current unrest poses a direct threat to India's security. And these groups have historically harbored anti India sentiments and could use this instability to reassert themselves, potentially carrying out cross border attacks and fomenting unrest in India's northeastern states. The economic impact. Bangladesh is one of India's largest trading partners in South Asia, with bilateral trade exceeding 10 billion annually. The ongoing unrest could disrupt this trade and the trade routes, affecting the business confidence and hindering the investment flows between these two countries. For Indian companies operating in Bangladesh, political instability could mean disruptions in operations, increased risks, and potential financial losses. Moreover, any significant economic downturn in Bangladesh could lead to reduction in demand for Indian goods and services, impacting sectors such as textile, pharmaceuticals, and the commerce goods. The strategic and the regional implications. Now, Bangladesh's instability could have a broader regional implications for India's strategic interests. Bangladesh is a key player in India's neighborhood first policy and its broader South Asian regional strategy. Instability in Bangladesh could weaken regional cooperative initiatives such as the Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation, which is also known as BIMSTEC, and hinder the connectivity projects which were aimed at integrating the South and the Southeast Asia. Furthermore, the unrest could lead to a regime change or increased influence of the anti-Indian elements in Bangladesh, and it could also open the door for greater Chinese influence in Dhaka. Mind you, China also have influence in Pakistan, Afghanistan, and to some extent Sri Lanka as well. Now, China has been steadily increasing its footprint in the Bangladesh through investments in infrastructure and the defense, and a weakened and unfriendly government in Dhaka could tilt this strategic balance in Beijing's favor, challenging India's position. So, so basically, India, having previously highlighted issues religion phobia in international forums, now faces a complex diplomatic challenge in Bangladesh. While India's development partnerships in the region have been strong, and the current situation demands a nuanced approach, working closely with both UNIS and the army, as well as maintaining a connection with Bangladeshi people. The situation mirrors the challenge which India has faced in Myanmar and the Maldives, where supporting certain leaders without the broader engagement has led to difficulties when political power shifts. The path forward for India in Bangladesh will require a careful diplomacy, balancing support for the democratic process with the need to maintain a regional stability. So now I would like to conclude this video by saying Bangladesh is at a critical juncture facing the dual challenges of navigating a complex political transition and preventing an economic crisis. The coming months will be crucial in determining whether the country can return to the path of stability and the democratic governance. The protests in Bangladesh are a stark reminder of the deep-seated political challenges which the country has already been facing since 2 decades, including the need for genuine democratic reforms and accountability of the human rights abuses. As the situation continues to evolve, both domestic and international observers are closely watching how the transition will unfold and whether this will lead to a meaningful change in the country's political landscape. I hope the situation gets better and the life gets back to its normal pace. Thank you so much for watching the video and stay tuned for more.